Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Valen, and this is Eureka, a mod that adds in airships or floating ships, and you can interact with items on the ships at the same time. Welcome to Eureka, where you can make your own flying ship or just one that works out in the water. It's all dependent upon you and your desires and how things work. So in this case, I'm going to show you how you can actually fly away with your own house. Or other creation. I've got a few in here that you can mess around with. First thing though, you do need to know that this mod is currently in alpha, which means that it is very buggy, very prone to breaking worlds and everything like that. So don't add this lightly to any kind of mod pack that you might be messing with. It's also having a little bit of problems at the moment with multiplayer, but they're working on it, and it's coming along quite nicely. I was just so excited about seeing this mod that I had to kind of share it with you guys. It's really cool and a ton of fun to play with. That being said, here's more or less everything that's in the mod. There's not a lot to look at. Mostly it's a lot of color variation, but you are going to need to make one of these ship helms to start. Now, a ship helm is appropriately a type of wood that you might have, plus a gold ingot, and that's it. And you can then make your own type of ship. Now, keep in mind, though, that your ships may vary considerably. In this case, I have a small house, and just by logging into this thing, I can then make it fly off into the sunset. And yes, you can turn these things at weird angles and all sorts of crazy stuff. They don't actually crush enemies in their current setup. I don't know if they will. Lots of things may change over time, but it's a ton of fun, and I've really been enjoying it. So it doesn't have to be something as big as a house. It doesn't have to be something extremely massive like an aircraft carrier, though you could make those. It could be very small and tidy. And in this case, I've got my own little kind of airplane here set up, a little air scooter, if you will. But you just need some kind of block to attach your ship helm to, whether it be in the water or on the land. It doesn't really matter. You can get started that way. Though I do recommend that you have it not touching other items so that it doesn't have as much of a problem detecting what the ship is. So you have your blocks floating. Now, if there are some things, like if you have a large quantity of blocks that you're going to be doing and it's all like attached to the ground, some things might not attach as you might think. But you only need to have a starter block. So I don't need to actually build the rest of the ship yet if I don't want to. I can just put this helm here and then I can activate it from there. So by sneak right-clicking this, I then have the options to assemble, align, or disassemble. Currently disassemble is not working, but aligning will allow you to align more with the Minecraft grid system. So it's like north, south, east, west. It will just automatically align your ship slowly in those directions if possible. Assemble will create your ship, and you notice that it just kind of fell out of the sky and it's now sitting on the ground. Well, you can actually pilot this. It's very slow because I'm on land. It's a piece of wood. There's nothing helping it to float. But if I get this in the water, then I actually have kind of like this little scooter of a boat, if you will, and I can kind of direct it around a little bit. It may not be very fast because it doesn't have an engine or anything like that, but currently I can steer this thing and it gets a little bit wobbly. For those that have motion sickness, you should probably be aware that that was a very mild version and you may end up experiencing some issues. Anyway, let's make this jet ski a little bit faster, shall we? We're going to give it an engine so that it actually has some kind of, I don't know, weight to it, if you will. Let's make it longer. Yes, you can build on this while it's currently like in the water. You can do all sorts of stuff. In fact, let's kind of make this a little bit front heavy if we can. There we go. And because it's aiming a little bit down in the front, that's actually not a bad thing. Adding planks on here will make different buoyancy levels and stuff like that, because wood is somewhat buoyant, so it will float in the water. But if you add something like stone to it, there we go, I just grabbed some stone from the inventory, you'll notice it starts getting a bit heavy in the back, and it starts like looking like it's ready to sink or something. So it kind of acts as a ballast, but it isn't specifically a ballast, because there is a ballast block if you really want to. These things are heavy, and intended to, yeah, it will drag it down in a certain area. But not to worry, we can actually still use this. Just right-clicking on here will work, and I can back this up. I can turn this. I should have like a beeper sound going on right now. Beep, beep, beep. And fly, like scoot this around in the world. But we've got this little opening here in your ship engine, which, by the way, is made with stone, an iron ingot, and a blast furnace and a piece of glass. So you're upgrading your blast furnace from a furnace to a ship engine. Now I'm just going to grab a bunch from the creative inventory here and just toss it in. And as you do so, the coal will light up in here and it'll start generating heat. Now the heat will then start giving you increased speed. Oh, you notice I started like diving down under the water a little too much there, just because I'm going too fast and I'm kind of aiming at a downward angle. Not to worry, that's what floaters are for. Floaters are just a spruce plank with some string around it, and you get 16 of them. All right, let's get off of there. And sneaking and moving on the ship actually just kind of holds you still. I'm trying to move right now, and all I can do is look around. So you do have to be aware of that. But let's add in a floater block. Oh my gosh. It gets a little bit bouncy. So it's something you're going to have to watch out for. That if you add too many floater blocks to too small of a device, it might have a little problem. There we go. Let's add some ballast here, and it'll calm it down at least enough that I can kind of click on here properly. Okay, so it may not be the best creation. Don't judge, but it will work. Just be aware that, yeah, sometimes it's currently set up to kind of like go a little bit crazy. Whoa! Like I said, folks, alpha. They're still working on the property values for those, but if you make a bigger ship that's just solely out of something like wood planks, it's a lot more stable. For example, I just have this little 3-planker right here, and if I make it a lot bigger, and even higher up out of the water, then it makes it a lot simpler to work with. So feel free to just design your own boat, but it's probably not the best to add a ship engine and something too small unless you have it really well balanced, because then you might bounce a little too much. But that's only during these alpha stages. I'm sure things are going to change as the mod progresses. Just to give a brief example of a decent boat, this one is made entirely of wood. Of course, there is also a dragon head at the front, but sometimes you just need that in kind of like a Viking ship style, and it goes just fine on the water without kind of dipping in one direction or another, not particularly going fast. Adding in a little bit of weight and one floater in the middle there, you can see that the ship is kind of balanced out a bit because I added in an engine just so that it could go a bit faster. But I got to be careful. If I back up a little too much, I could go underwater. But there are options for you to actually make submarines in here as well. And yes, you can actually make boats with floaters and engines and stuff like that in the Nether. You can use the warped or the crimson style woods, and it should make it so that you float in lava. But you're going to have to be really cautious because they have some different values. We'll get into that towards the end of the video, but let's talk about how you can actually interact with stuff. You can actually put things like a chest on a flying device. You notice this is sitting diagonal, so you know it's a flying device because I can just like move it already. It currently has an engine on it. It has one of these ship helms on there. It has workable trap doors. It has an armor stand that's working on there that you can interact with. It also has a chest in there that I can interact with as well. Even while on the ship and flying it, I can interact with these things. So it's really fantastic so far. I'm very impressed with the progress that this has made. But you can see here, we're going to need a little bit of coal. But before we do, let's talk about this block here, the balloon. Now, yes, balloons are actually flammable. So are helms and floaters. So you're going to want to be very cautious about those, especially in the Nether. You're going to want those things away from lava or open flame. Now, something like a campfire is, of course, still just fine, so you don't need to worry about that. And floaters are made from several different sources, whether it be wool, phantom membranes, or paper, and it gets you different quantities as appropriate. Or even string and leather if those resources aren't available. But once you attach one of those to a ship helm, you then have your own flying device. Just by holding the space bar to jump or something like that, you can then start floating up, into the sky. But let's continue on with trying to upgrade this a bit. So if I access my chest here and I take some of this coal, put that in the fuel in the engine here, and then I start accessing this, I can move a lot faster. It's pretty nice with how fast I can then move with this. And that's it. That's the extent of it. You don't lose any kind of momentum or anything, but your height is going to be restricted by the weight of your vehicle and the number of balloons that you have, or the buoyancy that it might have as well. So I could feasibly add more things like floaters to make it lighter, but that's not really going to help you too much. You're probably just going to want to add more balloons. So if I sneak off of here and I start, I meant to fall. Yes, you can actually build on the sides of these things, on the top, the bottom, everything like that. But if you break the ship helm or it is lost, then your ship will fall. Alternately, you should be aware that if you remove certain flotation devices, your ship will also fall. And if it's currently like over a dangerous terrain or something like that, you could take some damage or lose the ship if it falls into lava or something. But just adding the balloon to it, you can see it raised up already. And if I add some more, we've got our own little cruiser here, and I can go up even higher. So as long as your ship is light enough, you can go up really high into the sky. And going down, in this case, the default setting is the letter V. V as in Victor. So you do not want to hit sneak. That just disengages you from the helm. Now, just to show you some of the neat stuff that this mod has to offer, let's raise up this garden bed that I have currently created. Now, this is in alpha, and I've been reporting bugs that I've been finding as I find them, but this has been quite an experience. For example, you notice that I now have a flying farmland. It's really unique and very dangerous in its current manner, because the water blocks currently act more like an air block. So you do have to be cautious about that. But it does give you a measure of a mobile farmland. For example, that house that I had flown around in earlier that you see right here is currently kind of set up to be a mobile base. So this is really going to give you your Final Fantasy kick there if you really want to make your own flying contraptions or ships that are your home base. Now, there is something else that you should be aware of, and that is the anchor. The anchor is made with just a bit of iron and string, and if you place this on your ship in some way, let's put it right there, it won't actually do anything to the ship itself just by attaching it. For example, I can still move just fine, I can still go up into the sky just fine, but if I add a redstone signal to it, and then I start interacting with this and I try taking off, it's going to stop me from doing so. I can spin in place a little bit, but then it's going to kind of like lock me into this like area where it is. But if I turn it off, I can then take off again, and all is good and well in the world. So there's a really nice option for keeping your ship anchored in a specific spot if you so desire. And as promised, let's take a brief stop in the Nether, where we have down here some of my ship examples. Now, these are not by any means going to stay exactly as they are, but just so that you're aware, I currently only have some of these crimson planks. There's nothing else on it, plus one of the ship helms attached. And you can see how low to the lava this actually will stay. And if I desire, I can walk on it. Your weight doesn't actually change the bearing of the ship at all, thank goodness. And I can feasibly go in this, but as you can see, just a bit of movement and it starts like kind of dropping a little bit in the lava. So that's a bit dangerous to kind of work with. You can, of course, build up above that and raise your helm above the lava level, but I'm just giving you an idea so that you are aware if you make something simple, you might pay the price for it. Now, in this case, we've got warped planks. They're a little bit more buoyant, and if I use this, you can see that I actually can turn some, but if I turn too much, I'll start dipping into the lava, so I've got to like turn in very small increments in order to avoid that. Moving on, though, I can then move straight in a straight line or backing up without much problem or catching on fire. And this is just giving you like kind of like a level idea. And if you are going to add yourself some balloons or something like that to these, make sure that they stay away from fire sources because lava will ignite them. Yeah, it's something that I found out the hard way. And yeah, sometimes just adding more weight isn't always the best solution. You might want to broaden your horizons and add different material types and experiment, especially if you're in the overworld. Whereas in the Nether, you might have some problems trying to find your own personal way of getting around on a lava runner. You might just want to fly around instead. So remember my little hot air balloon from the beginning? It's got a couple of engines on it plus a helm, but you might also want to be aware, and know that, like I said, the campfire doesn't actually hurt it any, that if you add in more engines, it goes a bit faster. So you will need to have them fueled up. And yes, I have way too many for what I currently have here, but just be aware that this has lots of lift. It doesn't have a lot of weight because there's not many blocks that are not the balloons themselves, just engines, and it goes at a pretty decent rate. So if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and don't be afraid to stop by on Twitch. Click the notification bell on either platform. And until next time, folks, I'll see ya.